In the context of modern geopolitics, the relationship between the United States and the Russian Federation remains one of the key axes shaping the global order. These two nuclear powers, with a history of confrontation dating back to the Cold War, continue to maintain a complex relationship characterized by strategic competition, conflicts of interest, and periodic tensions. A scenario of direct conflict between these two countries, although unlikely, still requires serious analysis due to the potentially extremely severe consequences for all humanity. A war between the United States and the Russian Federation would leave a completely transformed world, with far-reaching consequences on all aspects of global life. These impacts are not only confined within the geographical scope of the conflict, but also spread across the entire international system, reshaping the world order for decades. The conflict would result in civilian and military casualties reaching millions. Major cities in Eastern Europe and Western Russia would be heavily devastated, with essential infrastructure such as hospitals, water supply systems, and electrical grids almost entirely destroyed. Massive population displacements would occur, with over 30 million people becoming refugees, creating the largest humanitarian crisis since World War II. Areas affected by tactical nuclear weapons would become no-go zones, uninhabitable for decades. Food insecurity would become severe, especially in developing countries dependent on grain imports from Russia and Ukraine. Consequently, widespread famine would affect many regions in Africa and the Middle East, causing social instability and secondary migration waves. Global economic collapse. The global economy would fall into the most severe depression since the 1930s. Stock markets would crash, with leading indices losing over 60% of value within months. The international financial system would suffer significant fractures as central banks struggle to control the resulting unrest. Energy prices would skyrocket as Russia's oil and gas production, a major global supplier, faces severe disruption. Oil prices would peak at $500 per barrel, triggering a wave of global inflation, with some countries experiencing triple-digit inflation rates. Global supply chains would break down, resulting in severe shortages of essential goods from electronic components to medicine and food. Industries dependent on resources from Russia such as titanium, palladium, and other rare earth metals would almost cease operations. The aviation, automotive, and electronic sectors would be particularly hard hit. Global unemployment would double, with over 500 million people losing jobs in the first year following the conflict. Environmental and health consequences lasting generations. Even limited nuclear explosions, primarily tactical weapons, would cause extensive environmental impacts. The phenomenon of localized nuclear winter would occur as dust and smoke from explosions and ensuing fires reduce global average temperatures by 0.7 degrees Celsius for many years. This would result in abnormal weather cycles, worsening extreme weather events, and disrupting agricultural yields globally. Widespread radioactive pollution would contaminate water sources, arable land, and ecosystems over tens of thousands of km superscript 2. Cancer rates would increase by 300% in heavily affected areas, with an estimated 5 to 7 million additional cancer cases diagnosed over the next 50 years. Birth defects would rise significantly, creating a prolonged healthcare burden for many generations. Paradoxically, some areas would become havens for wildlife as humans could no longer inhabit them, similar to observed phenomena in the Chernobyl exclusion zone. However, surviving species would have to adapt to the changed environment, leading to remarkable evolutionary changes in some populations. Comprehensive geopolitical restructuring. The geopolitical world order post-conflict would be entirely different from before. NATO, although not officially dissolved, would become severely weakened and lose its central role in European security. The European Union would face an existential crisis, with some countries withdrawing from the Union to pursue neutral policies or seek new security assurances. China would emerge as a unique superpower not severely affected by the conflict, quickly taking the lead in economic and technological fields. Beijing would expand its influence through revamped initiatives like the Belt and Road, providing reconstruction aid to affected nations under conditions of political and economic alignment. A new multipolar order would emerge, with regional powers like India, Brazil, Indonesia, and South Africa playing more significant roles in international affairs. The United Nations would undergo extensive reforms, with the Security Council expanded and veto powers significantly curtailed to prevent future deadlocks. Social transformation and collective psychology. The war would leave profound psychological wounds on many generations. The phenomenon of widespread collective psychological trauma would extend not only in directly involved nations, but globally. Rates of mental disorders, especially PTSD, depression, and anxiety, would soar worldwide. Cultural and social psychology would shift towards valuing self-reliance and small, dispersed communities. The prepper movement would become mainstream, with families frequently stocking up on food, medicine, and essential supplies. Major urban areas would lose their appeal as people seek more sustainable lifestyles in self-sufficient small communities. Popular culture would reflect an obsession with nuclear disaster, with numerous artworks, literature, and films focusing on post-apocalyptic themes. Concurrently, a global peace movement would gain momentum, especially among the younger generation, promoting a new internationalism and strong opposition to nuclear weapons. In the post-war era, many technological sectors would develop at unprecedented speeds to address new challenges. Advanced nuclear decontamination technologies would be developed to restore affected areas. Automated robots and drones would be widely deployed to perform tasks in hazardous environments. The healthcare sector would witness significant breakthroughs in treating radiation-related diseases and genetic damage. Gene editing technologies would become crucial tools to assist those affected by radiation. Renewable energy would become a global priority as traditional energy supplies face disruption. Distributed, self-sufficient energy systems would be preferred over large, centrally located plants susceptible to damage. Urban agriculture and hydroponic farming would thrive to combat the shortage of safe arable land. Reshaping the global economy, the post-conflict global economic model would shift from uncontrolled globalization to purposeful globalization. Nations would prioritize economic security and self-sufficiency in essential sectors. Supply chains would be restructured to be less dependent and vulnerable, with production dispersed closer to consumption markets. The international monetary system would undergo extensive reforms, reducing reliance on the US dollar. Central bank-issued digital currencies and decentralized payment solutions would become widespread. China would push for a digitized yuan as an alternative reserve currency in international trade. New economic models would emerge, emphasizing sustainability, resilience, and social equity over unlimited growth. Donut economics and similar models, balancing human needs with planetary limits, would be adopted by many countries during Reconstruction. The conflict and its aftermath would create an existential crisis in human thought. Faith in continuous human progress would face severe challenges. New philosophical schools would emerge, emphasizing human humility and harmonious relationships with nature. Traditional religions would experience a revival as people seek meaning and solace during crises. Simultaneously, new spiritual movements combining ecological and community elements would also flourish. Global education would shift significantly, incorporating core curricula on peace, conflict resolution, and sustainable development. The history of the U.S.-Russia conflict would be taught as a cautionary tale for future generations about the dangers of extreme nationalism and arms races. The aftermath of the U.S.-Russia war marks the end of one era and the beginning of a new epoch in human history. While it causes immeasurable suffering and destruction, the conflict ultimately leads to a new global consensus on the importance of peace and international cooperation. Post-war generations, shaped by painful lessons, would build new institutions and rules to prevent similar conflicts. The era of mere great power competition would give way to a model of global governance based on shared human interests and respect for the planet's ecological limits. The world after the U.S.-Russia war is not only a devastated and transformed world, but also a reborn world with a profound awareness of civilization's fragility and humanity's shared responsibility in protecting a common future.